Hello. I hope you're all staying well, taking good care of yourself. Um, you know, I was going to say hello. How are you doing? But we're in tough times right now, folks. We're in tough times. I'll be doing another video later, more related to COVID, things of that nature. But I wanted to follow up on a video that I had done a little bit ago on the labor shortage. Um, and I want to connect a couple more dots today. If you don't know whom I am, my name is John Solano. I've been a practicing professional counselor for over 33 years, and I've worn lots of hats, as you might guess. One of my specialties, um, among the traditional, I guess you could say specialties. When I mean traditional, is the study of relationships and trauma. Families, things like that. I was a family counselor for the last 11 plus years. So I know quite a bit about that, human development, adolescent development, all those kinds of things. But where my passion really lies has been in transpersonal psychology, and that has to do more with depth psychology, what we call depth psychology, and mythology, and the different spiritual traditions and practices, um, and the Jungian psychology, things like this. So that's where I find I learn the best, and that's where I find a lot of meaning and a lot of answers to some of the things that we wrestle with. And so I bring all these things together and tie in a number of different ideas. Excuse me, I was just outside shoveling snow. So hopefully you're not buried in snow. So I wanted to bring together, again, picking up on the labor shortage issue, but I want to talk about trauma and a video, a TED Talk that I recently saw by a guy named Rutger Bregman, Bregman. And he gave some information about the benefit of people having a guaranteed basic income. And if you're like me, maybe you're somewhere in this political landscape, you're somewhere in the middle. You're not too far right, you're not too far left, if you want to call it that. As I mentioned, I'm a big fan of wisdom teachings, mythology, and again, just the teachings that have been passed down from the great teachers and have, are still with us today. I'm not sure that makes me conservative. I think what it does make me is committed to some things that have to do with all of us being people who hold very dear to ourselves basic virtues. And when we live those out, we call that an act of integrity. And I think we all want to be people of integrity, and we all are attracted to people of integrity. So if you want to call it the journey or the path of truth, I think can be very tricky at times. So, it's like when we listen to, I guess you could say, the information being provided politically by the right and then by the left. I think if you're like me, again, I hear a little bit of truth in each. And then there are pieces of it that I don't necessarily agree with. So, and I understand that as human beings, and again, this is validated through psychology and as well as, transpersonal psychology, that as human beings, we need stress in our lives. We need to seek out challenges, and we need adversity. That's how we grow strong. That's how we grow. That's literally how we build muscle. We build muscle physically, we build muscle psychologically, and even spiritually through adversity. And I think that's kind of weird, because so much of the time we end up as human beings pursuing pleasure and pursuing kind of an easier path, and yet it never seems to come, does it? Life is tough, as the Buddhists say. Life is suffering, they say, and there's something to that. And and so anyway, I'm thinking about this, and looking at the political landscape, and trying to, listen to all the spiritual teachings and wisdom teachings and mythology that I've studied over the many decades. And I'm trying to think of, like this guaranteed basic income idea. What's that about? And what does that have to do with trauma, and what does it might have to do with the labor shortage? Or just work itself and occupation. Um, Now, one of the things that I have mentioned in many of my videos that I hope you've had a chance to look at is that I spent a number of years developing a particular theory called the empowerment philosophy and the integrity model. And I was fortunate enough, blessed enough to be able to apply that in my work, and it's real specifically within an at-risk youth program called the Baristas Program, a really innovative partnership between the federal government, Starbucks, and a large nonprofit. And we were working with youth who had come from traumatized backgrounds. And the whole purpose of the program was to help them become employable. In other words, to be able to successfully engage the labor market. However, my understanding of trauma, I was able to develop, again, a program and a curriculum that really kind of got to the root of things, which was, addressing the trauma. Why address the trauma? Um, and what is trauma, in fact? And so what does it have to do with guaranteed income? But, it's kind of like one thing at a time here, so I want to draw upon the psychological kind of ideas around attachment, and to kind of narrow this conversation. But basically, it's said that as human beings, we need to attach to things. In other words, we're very vulnerable when we're young. We need to attach to adults, and hopefully the adults we attach to like it. They take good care of us, and that's the beginning of our life. That's the beginning of self-esteem. That's the beginning of meaning and purpose about life. That's the beginning of whether or not we trust the world, et cetera, et cetera. And so attachment is a very important part of our existence. And so when that doesn't go well, that's called disrupted attachment. And people often talk about that as a traumatic event. And so whether they trusted somebody, or whether they had that and who didn't come through for them, or whether they didn't have a particular parent or had no parents at all, those most often are registered, for people as trauma. A traumatic event then becomes attached to, what we call disrupted attachment. So disruption in attachment can be a traumatic event. Well, why is that? Why is that significant when it comes to occupation and engaging the labor market? Well, as I was saying, with this group that I ran for 7 years, this program, we worked with at-risk youth who had been traumatized. So they had all experienced a disrupted attachment. Well, what is it about the nature of attachment that becomes an impediment to engaging in the labor market? Well, it is because attachment, or disrupted attachment, and I guess you could say it leads to a state of anxiety and kind of a disintegration of the psyche. So the psyche becomes preoccupied with safety and with survival. So you'll often see when people have experienced trauma, they are preoccupied with staying safe, or minimizing any threat. You can also see the opposite of that occur. You can see people who are dangerously risk-taking as well. But when we look at that connection between engaging the labor market, there's kind of two pieces that pop out into my mind. One, as I mentioned earlier, is that there's a sense of purpose and meaning. So when we have a healthy attachment with adults, we get a sense that we're valuable, our self-esteem is up, we get a sense that the world not only is friendly, but it actually wants us. And it wants us to be in the world, and it wants us to contribute something to the world, that our presence in the world is important. So from that healthy attachment, there is this whole kind of configuration of things that happen that cause us to feel like we matter, that we mean something to the world, and our presence in the world means something. And consequently, we feel like engaging the world. So whether that's socially or with our ideas or what have you, or through one of the biggest things that we do in our lives, which is occupation, to be of service. Okay. So when a person is traumatized, as I mentioned, usually it ends up people being in a in a stance, if you will, that's more defensive. So they set up fences, and so for protection, et cetera, it becomes a preoccupation. And that because that preoccupation has been fueled by a traumatic event, people are very committed to the position that they've taken. Now, with healthy attachment, people often refer to the circle of security. There are many different names given to it, but this is basically how it works, is that when we grow up, as I said, it's important for us to experience challenges and adversity. That's how we build muscle. That's how we develop a sense of what we call self-efficacy. It means that we exert ourselves into the world in order to achieve a particular goal, and we're successful at it. And again, it's very simple, isn't it? But it's what we do every day. You go to the gym, you set up a challenge for yourself. You're going to lift 50 pounds or whatever, and you do that a few times. It's strenuous, but you do it and you build muscle and you can increase your capacity for more. So that's what it's like when we're developing. And so as little infants, if you will, and as we grow, we have a solid base of adults there for us. And if you watch an infant, they start to crawl around and they start to do things. Maybe they try to pick themselves up, and they fall down and they fall down. Sometimes they might hurt themselves or get frustrated. And what happens? The parent goes to them and soothes them, or they come to the parent to be soothed. And once they're soothed, they turn around and they go back out and try again. And they'll accomplish that goal. And then they'll go a little farther away, or they'll try something a little bit more strenuous. And that's what we do in life, is that we venture out. And so part of the psyche of the human being is to be adventurous, to take risks, to take calculated risks. But the idea is that we take risks to the degree that we have a stable base, that our attachments are stable, that when we fall, if you will, we fall down, we hurt ourselves, we can come back to that place and receive something, whether it be encouragement or inspiration or physical attention or what have you. We get our needs met. Once that happens, we regroup and we go back out into the world again to take new risks. You see, that going out into the world is really the world of occupation. It's the world of employment. To be able to send out resumes, deliver resumes, get on a computer and explore things, explore a career path, go to school, take a course, go to a job interview, show up for your first day, get through your probationary period. This is all requires risk. This all requires not only risk, but a sense of adventure. In other words, that we have we get some enjoyment from it, or we're not so anxious about it that we don't present well. And we all know about first impressions and things of this nature when we're trying to be successful in a job interview. And a lot of that has to do with practicing things and feeling confident and feeling like you can, step into the unknown and be effective. And so a big part of being effective in the labor market, if you will, has to do with attachment and how healthy our attachments are. And so I'm thinking about, well, what does this have to do with guaranteed income? Well, one of the things that we could derive, I guess you could say, from what I've mentioned, is that when there's anxiety present, it becomes a preoccupying force. It's very interesting, when we think about it, call it a preoccupying force, because we're all looking for occupations. And in order to, you have to be available. I was once doing some counseling work in an employment center with a mother who had been unsuccessful in finding employment. And so knowing what I know about trauma, I began to ask her about how it was going at home. And she said, not that good. there were some things going on, what have you. But anyway, at the end of the day, what it meant for her was that she was preoccupied. She was preoccupied with guilt. I said, you know, how much of the day do you end up beating yourself up? She said, pretty much all day. I said, well, you've already got a job then. See, you're already occupied. And so, you know, we have to occupy something that's vacant. And so when we can let go of our preoccupations, we become more available for what's being offered in the world. And so that's why this program for youth was it was so important that it be not just trauma informed, but that it actually began to help youth discover and I guess you could say resolve the traumas that they had experienced, because all those traumas that they'd experienced became preoccupying. And so their psyche, their mind was already unavailable. Their mind was unavailable for learning anything new. And all they were attached to, if you were a lot of tragic narratives. And so we had to address that. But the basic guaranteed income idea, I'm thinking, you know, what is that about? A lot of people are against that, right? To just give people money. But I'm thinking, you know, when people have a sense of security, as we look at developmentally, when we have a sense of security, a sense of being anchored to a stable base, a sense, you know, a knowingness that if we go out into the world and we hurt ourselves or something happens, we get sick or disabled or whatever, we can come back to a home base and get our needs met and be taken care of. When we know that that's in place, that is huge peace of mind. That is huge peace of mind. And it's from that base then that we can recover and go out into the world again. And so I began to think about this guy, Rutger Bregman, what he was trying to get at with this idea. And he had mentioned several other countries and cities within those countries where, you know, where this had been applied successfully. And, you know, it seems like here in the West, you know, we're against that, but I'm still wondering whether this is a valid thing, you know, that we should be thinking about. I think developmentally, there's some truth to it. And what it would be like to be able to know, you, me, and everybody, that we could venture out into the world and try some things. And this also is about innovation. Be innovative, try some things. Hey, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you've got some place to go back to. You know, we used to have pretty intact nuclear families and extended families that were there for us, that were here, that safety net occurred. And sadly, we all know that, you know, that there have been a lot of forces over the last number of decades that have really not thought well of the nuclear family and of family. And I was just talking about this with my wife recently, who, you know, we all have kids, but none of them are around us anymore. There's just been this ideology, you know, that has permeated society where, you know, a lot of kids just, you know, move away or what have you. And, you know, and if you're a parent, we all know that that's part of life, you know, that our kids get farther and farther away from us. But there's also something to be said about not getting too far away, because life is going to throw you some curveballs and knock you down a bit. And it's, if you have a safety net there, if you have a place where you can come back and get some support and some comfort. I know that, you know, we try to seek out counselors and, you know, I'm a counselor. So I mean, I've talked with a lot of people, but you know, we seek out groups, we seek out other kinds of support groups and things where, you know, we can try to get those needs met, but it's not always as easy as it sounds. So again, now what could be the drawback of something like this? Well, at the risk of going on and on here, you know, I've done a number of videos on this dynamic called the inflated entitlement and indulgence dynamic. I've been studying this and writing on it and doing presentations, and I apply it in my practice. I've been doing this for over 30 years. It's been always with my practice. And when we look at trauma, and here's One, one of the things that I think is a wrong direction these days is that people believe that we can actually reach a place where we're not going to experience any trauma. Unfortunately, that has never been the case and never will be the case. And to think that's going to be the case is really more indicative of kind of an immature psychological state. And so that's why we have so many disciplines around us, so many wisdom teachings that help us understand a good perspective on dealing with, with trauma. So, I ask people to turn to those things to get a sense of how to become resilient and how to, navigate these challenges of life. But the bottom line is that the human psyche, when it experiences trauma, becomes really susceptible to an inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence. Because the dynamic there is that, and this is very unique to who we are as human beings, is that we feel entitled to be taken care of. Not only do we feel that biologically, psychologically, we're also told that. And so, when, say, for instance, a child is born and they have parents or adults in their lives who don't take good care of them, or they're not present, or they're not physically or like psychologically present. And there's a saying that I heard, and I think it comes from Dr. Vanessa Lapointe, who said that, when adults don't step up, kids do. Basically, what that means is that when people don't meet our needs in the way that we think that they should, then we do our best to try to meet our own needs. But that's not our preferred experience. And so it's like doing something against our will. And in the human psyche, ask yourself, like, when you do something against your will, don't you want something for it? What I call compensation. When we do something against our will, the human psyche wants compensation. It feels entitled to something. And so when we don't get what we want, when we are hurt or traumatized, we end up feeling robbed of something. And whenever we feel robbed of something, we want something back. Now, here's the thing, like, we can get stuck in those patterns, this sense of entitlement and indulgence. Because what is supposed to happen developmentally is that when we begin life, our attachments, our secure base is horizontal. We look to our environment, we look to the adults in our environment, we look to other people to keep us safe, for that, for that base of safety and stability that we can come back to. But as we grow, that base can become unstable for a lot of different reasons. And one of the primary reasons is that our parents and our families have their own lives, or maybe they even pass away. And so eventually all of us as children have to experience those moments when our parents, this thing that we thought was going to last forever, this place where we put our faith, is no longer there. And we have to start looking for other places to put our faith, if you will, other places to anchor ourselves. And that's what I call vertical. So our first level of security and attachment comes at a horizontal level, where we're looking at people. But as we grow, we realize that people are imperfect, and people are self-centered, and people don't always meet our needs. And so we start to look for something else, something more solid. And that's where, as I said, my studies of mythology and transpersonal psychology and spiritualities, kind of pick up the ball there almost. Like, I think that's why many people turn to those disciplines and those stories and those ideologies, because they've lasted the test of time, and they do give a sense of security, and they do give guidance, and they do give comfort. And so what can happen is that people, rather than move into that vertical orientation, they can stay stuck into a horizontal orientation. One of those ways that we get stuck is that we turn to government. We start to turn to legislation and government as the, I guess you could say, parent, the stable part that we seek, and it just never works out well. The government is impersonal and has no care to know who we are as individuals. And so the basic guaranteed income, on the one hand, if it gives people a sense of confidence and security that causes them to want to be innovative and to venture out into the world and to be adventurous and to engage the labor market, then it's a good idea. If the basic guaranteed income becomes part of somebody's inflated sense of entitlement and indulgence, they will never move out of that position into the labor market or engage the labor market, because the guaranteed income they're receiving, they feel entitled to. And so there's nothing inspirational about it. They're not connected to a source of inspiration or anything uplifting other than their own tragic narratives about life, which are depleting and also a form of indulgence. And so that's the nastiness of the dynamic, because the more one indulges, the more depleted people get. But the more depleted people get, the more they run the tragic narrative. And the tragic narrative says that they were robbed of something and then entitled to something. So, and the things that we often entitle ourselves to are not very healthy. And I can say more about that in my COVID video, because I think that's part of what we're all facing right now during this pandemic, which seems to be around, and it's going to be around for a long time. But if you're like me, I am being challenged, if you will, to look at all my indulgences, thoughts and also lifestyle that I might be engaged in that aren't in my best interest. And this is me trying to shift out of a tragic narrative into a place of appreciation. I mean, what else can we do but manage the things that we can manage? And we can at least manage the things in our immediate surroundings, which, try to eliminate everything that we're doing that is depleting us in some way. So whether it's, drinking too much or smoking too much or being negative or whatever it is, at least we can do something about that. Just handling those things is enough, as we all know. But at the end of the day, what else can we do other than to try to be, if you will, our best self? And that's what being a person of integrity is all about. So those are my thoughts on this. Again, connection between trauma, the circle of security, guaranteed income, the pros and cons, how feeling secure and confident can help us actually be more innovative and help us to be more adventurous so we can be more successful in engaging the labor market. So as I said in my earlier video, I think that that's one of the reasons why people aren't engaging the labor market right now, is because people are anxious, people are preoccupied, people are scared, and we're not really hearing a lot of positive messages from our government officials or from our leaders at this time. And so I think that, again, that speaks a little bit to, to the challenge that sometimes we find ourselves in of turning towards legislation and government to, to rescue us. And, when those things don't deliver, where do we turn? Where do you turn? And I think that that's where, I guess you could say, we get to see what we're made of. I know that's been true for me over the last year, especially. I talk a lot about integrity and spiritual discipline, et cetera, and the point of parenting and the point of life, and And it's easy to talk about when things are going well, but when things aren't going well, when things are tense or anxious, I guess I get to see what I'm made of, and if I can walk my talk in this. And so if you're like me, somebody who has been on the path of building your character and your psychological resilience and your spiritual resilience, it's in these times that again we get to see what we're made of, and stand in this place of the unknown. We just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know what the next year is going to bring. We don't know, you know, and I know we're looking towards the government, and I think we should, but we can't look towards the government for, for the deepest sense of security and meaning and purpose and belonging that we're looking for. So tough lessons, and they're lessons that keep coming throughout life. And so I really hope that you're doing okay. I hope that my message has been a benefit, and I'll keep producing them, because I think at the end of the day, that's more or less the meaning of life, is to care about one another. To care about one another. I think it's sad at this point that we have to think about nations going to war, when we are in a bigger war right now. It's called the pandemic, and we should all be uniting as countries, as communities, and as a world. We should all be uniting, and the billions of dollars that are going towards war and things, could be used towards increasing the health outcomes for all of us all over the globe. And so it's sad. I think that it's sad that we have to think about this as well. About global unrest and pending war. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, what do we do about it, other than, I think, at the end of the day, attempt to be our best selves here in this moment. Raise your kids well. Raise them to be young men and women of integrity. Strive towards that for yourself. Love the people around you. Quit being petty about little things and little gripes and things. This is not the time for that. This is the time to remember what's important in life. And so be grateful for what you have right here, right now, the very breath that you're taking, the roof over your head, the love that you have with your family, your children, your wife, your husband. This is a time to drop petty grievances and just remember what life is about. That is, I guess you could say, I was going to say one of the gifts, but one of the only alternatives we have right now. So know I'm thinking about you. I'll keep producing the videos, and I'll pray for all of us that we weather these storms and come out renewed, come out cleansed. All of us, everything that we're going through. I think it is a time of I was going to say turbulence and upheaval, but I don't even know about that. It's I've heard spiritual teachers talk about a state of emergency is often a state of emergence, almost like labor. We're giving birth to something, but it's difficult and scary and painful. And I'm sorry that people are losing their lives in this as well. It's not easy to find a metaphor for it, but we do need to gravitate towards our spiritual teachings and our mythology to understand what's going on. We have a choice to do that. That's what makes us incredibly unique. We make meaning of things. And so you have an opportunity to make meaning of what's going on, and it can either be tragic or it can be something better. And so let's hang on to that. Let's pray for that, that we'll come out of this. We'll come out of this better people, better countries. All right. Take care.